Bava Kamma Daf Chav Ches contains two primary sugyas. The daf is split in half evenly, pretty much by a Mishnah. The first half is the Gemara's discussion about the machlokes of Ovid Inish Dino the Nafshe, or not. Is a person allowed to take matters into his own hands to prevent himself from suffering a loss if the halacha is like him? The Gemara will bring 6 rayas to that question, and then we'll get into our next Mishnah, which introduces the topic of what happens if you step on somebody's jug, it breaks, and now the water that spilled out is a problem. What's halacha with that? So let's begin. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion. We had a machlokes. If you are in an argument with someone and he has your property or he's taking your property, and the halacha is like you, are you allowed to go force your will upon the other guy? Are you allowed to take the law into your own hands and act upon your rights, or do you have to go to court? The Gemara has said that this is only a question in a situation where you will suffer, where you will not suffer a loss. If you're going to suffer a loss, you're for sure allowed to take matters into your own hands to prevent the loss. But if you could recover everything fully by going to Beis Din, that's where we have a machlokes. Are you allowed to do everything anyway? So the Gemara brings a number of proofs. The Gemara's first proof is from a case where you have an ox and is attacking your ox. You have your own ox and another ox is climbing on top of it in order to kill it. So there's 2 ways to get rid of it. You could either pull yours out from under him, or you could push his off. So if you push his off and he dies, you chayiv. You didn't need to attack it with your hands. You should have pulled yours out. If you pull yours out and he falls and he dies, you are putter. So the Gemara says, what are we talking about here? The Pashtus is, the attacking shar is a shar hamud. If that's the case, you'll be able to collect full damages from the court. You're not going to suffer any loss. So why should you be putter if you pull your cow out? Obviously, it's because of an engineer enough, you're allowed to take the law into your own hands, even if you don't suffer loss. So the Gemara says, no, it's really a shar tam, and there is going to be a loss, and if everyone agrees you can, it's not relevant to our machlokes. And the question, of course, is if there's going to be a loss, why should you be putter if he pushes off? The answer is, the Gemara says, you could have saved it by pulling yours out. You didn't need to attack his physically, and therefore you are chayav for that. Next case the Gemara brings is if somebody fills up someone else's chutzner with jugs of oil or wine. So the halacha is that the owner of the chutzner is allowed to walk through his chutzner. He's allowed to step on the jugs, break them, do whatever he wants. So Mar says, okay, so clearly, even though he has no loss, he's no need to do that, you are allowed to take matters into your own hands. You're allowed to do what you want if the halacha is like you. So Mar says, no. Yitzchak explains, we're not saying he's allowed to just go whenever he wants. He's allowed to go to Beis Din. In order to get to the Beis Din, there's no recourse. He has to go through and he has to break the jugs that are in the way. Now, even though it says to go and to come back, coming back will also be part of the Beis Din process. Maybe you have to come back to get a shtar, a document to prove your case, or something along those lines. Next ayah is from a situation where someone has an Eved Ivri and it's Yovel, and the Eved Ivri is supposed to leave, he's supposed to go home, but he doesn't want to go. So the master is fighting with him and he's trying to send him away, and as part of that, he hits him and he injures him. So the halacha is he doesn't need to pay the damages. The Gemara learns it from a pasuk that says like sikhu kefir lashuv. We read it as like sikhu kefir lashuv. You don't need to pay anything for someone who's supposed to be leaving, supposed to go home. So the Gemara says there's no loss here. And you're obviously, it seems like you're allowed to hurt the guy to fulfill the law, which is that he's supposed to go home. So you see, Ovid energy l'nafshe. Gemara says, no, we're talking about a situation where there is the loss. This Eved is the thief, and if he stays around, he's going to steal from you. Gemara says, what do you mean? What, you kept him up till now? Why was he a thief all of a sudden? Gemara says, yeah, up till now he was your Eved. Al Pidin he was your Eved, and therefore he was afraid to steal from you. Now you're not his boss anymore. If he's going to stay in your house, he's going to end up stealing. That's the Gemara's first answer. Nachman Yitzchak is another answer that this Eved has a shivcha that was married to him by the Adain, and he's not allowed to be with the shivcha. That would be an Isser. So up till now he can stay because it was a Heter. Now it's an Isser, and therefore the Adain has to send him away. It's not about Ovid and Shdin Lenafshi from monetary issues. It's about being mafresh the guy from Navera, which you are allowed to use force to do. Next ayah the Gemara brings is from our Mishnah, and this is why this entire sukkah is here. Our Mishnah discussed somebody who leaves a jug in Rosh Hashanah, somebody else comes and trips over it and breaks it. He's putter for breaking it. So the Gemara says, you see, it's only if he trips over it, but if he were to step on it on purpose, he would be chayiv. And we said it earlier, according to one of the explanations as to what the Mishnah is referring to, is that the entire street is filled with jugs, you have nowhere else to go. And the implication is that if you step on it, you would be chayiv. So you see that you're not allowed to. So you see that you can't just go do whatever you want. So the Gemara says no. If you step on it, you putter also. The reason why we didn't want to say you stepped on it on purpose, the reason why we said you tripped over it, is because then the next thing we say is that if you get injured by it, you step on it, you break it, you get injured by it. So there, the owner is responsible to pay you for your injuries. That's only true if you tripped over it. If you stepped on it, you caused your own damage. There is no one, the owner of the jug doesn't need to pay you. It's your responsibility, but that's why we didn't discuss that scenario. But really, you are allowed to. I could say you are allowed to, and really it's possible that Ovid Inish Dina Linafshe. Okay, next story Limor brings is from the case of a woman who's defending her husband from a fight, and she reaches out and grabs the attacker's Mavushav, the area which causes an embarrassment. So the halacha is that she needs to pay for the baishas. The Torah says v'katzas kapas is cut off her hand. The Gemara says cut off doesn't literally mean cut off her hand. It means she has to pay money equal to the value of your hand. So the Gemara says, was there another recourse for her? Could she have saved her husband any other way or not? A simple implication would be that she couldn't save him any other way, and therefore it's Ovid Inish Dina Lenafshe. And you see that nevertheless she needs to pay. So obviously loy Ovid Inish Dina Lenafshe. The Gemara says no. Really, the cases where she could have saved a different way, and that's why she should have been responsible. That's why she shouldn't have done this. That's why she's responsible to pay the boishes that she cost him. So Mar asks if the situation where it's usher and she needs to pay is if she could have saved him a different way. The implication is that if she could not have saved him any other way, then she'd be allowed to. Why in the Sefer, when we're looking for a case that she's allowed to, do we say if it's a shliach of beis din she's allowed to? We'll talk about this later herself. If there was no other solution, a much more comparable case, there's no other solution, then she's allowed to. So Mar says, yeah, that's what it means. When it says that a shliach of the beis din is allowed to do it, we mean that if the wife has no other recourse and she needs to save her husband, there's nowhere else to do it. She says if she's acting as a shliach of the beis din, and then she is allowed to do it, and she would be potter for what she did. Next ayah the Gemara brings is somebody who has a field, and there is a pathway that the rabbim, the public, used to cross his fields. So he didn't want them walking in the middle of his field, so he took over the middle of the field. He took away the path, and he gave them a path on the side of the field and said, here, you guys, I'm replacing your path and just moving it. You can use it on the side. The halacha is he loses both. The path in the middle of the field still belongs to the rabbin, and he also loses the one that he set aside for them on the side. Now, if he's setting aside one for them on the side, why does he lose the one in the middle? The Gemara says, let him stand there in the middle with a stick and hit anybody who tries to walk through his field. You should be able to do that if Ovid Inish Dina Lenafshe. Obviously, loy Ovid Inish Dina Lenafshe. You cannot go stand there with a stick and do whatever you want, and therefore he's not going to be able to keep the people out of there, and that's why he lost his field. Meaning the Gemara is assuming that he's legally allowed to do this. He's allowed to move the property he's allowed to move the path that the public used to the side. The problem is that he can't actually defend it. It's us for him to defend it, and therefore practically he's not going to be able to do it because the court won't be able to intervene because the people are just going to walk. So the Gemara therefore says, so you see, he can't defend it. Loy of an engineer lenafshe. So the Gemara says, no, it's not the pshat. We don't allow him to do this. Al pi halacha, he's not allowed to give them a different route on the side of the field. And the Gemara has two versions of why not. One is Gzeira may give them a bad route, a twisty, longer route. We don't want him to do that. And Gzeira, that might happen. We don't allow him to mess with the route. The second version is Rashi, who says anything he's giving on the side is going to be a longer route because some people are going to have to walk all the way to the end of the field to get around. When it was in the middle, everybody had reasonable access to it. If it's all the way on the side, the people come from the opposite direction. They're going to have to walk very far to use it. So it's a worse path automatically. On that, the Gemara asks, if the path that he gave them is no good, so then let him take that path back. Why does he lose that path as well? The Gemara answers, is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda has a rule, once the public starts using a pathway, you can't take it away from them. It's part of the public interest and public rights. Next proof the Gemara brings, and this will be the last one, is from a owner of a field who sets payah, he sets the corner of the field aside for the poor people to take from. He sets aside a specific corner for them to take, but they came and took from a different corner of the field. So the halacha is that he loses both corners. Both of them are payah. So Gemara says, well, that doesn't make sense. If the aniyim are taking one and that's not the payah, if he loses his first corner, so that's the real payah, obviously. So when the poor people are taking from a different payah, let him come with a stick and chase them away. Obviously, he won't be able to defend it. He's not allowed to. And the courts aren't going to be helpful in this scenario. It'll be too late. And therefore, loy ovid inish lenafshe. The Gemara answers, no, it's not the pshat. When we say that both fields are payah, that both corners are payah. We don't mean that they're literally both the payah. The one that the anim are taking, that's the real payah with all its halachos. The one that he set aside has some halachos of payah, and that's that it is pater from meiser. Like we learned in the brisa, somebody who's mafkir, part of his vineyard, and he gets up in the morning and he picks the grapes from the vineyard. He's chayiv in certain things, and he's pater in meiser. Now the halacha is that the mitzvahs of parad oilus shikha payah and meiser are pater and hefker. This guy was mafkir, so he shouldn't be chayiv in anything. But since he took it back, he is chayiv in parad oilus shikha payah. However, meiser he is pater in, because once he was mafkir the field, he's pater in the meiser. So the same scenario here, where he was mafkir this field, he made it payah, this corner of the field, he made it payah. That's why he's pater in the meiser, even though it doesn't end up being payah, and he takes it back. This P'tur of Meiser stays, and that's all we mean when we say that it is still considered to be payah, both this corner and the corner that they're actually using. Okay, this concludes the Gemara, concludes the Sugya. Now we get to our next Mishnah. This Mishnah continues the halachas of the bar by speaking about what happens if you leave something in the street, again, and it causes people to trip, and it causes injury. So the case here is where you were carrying a jug of water, and it broke in Rosh Hashanah, and the water spilled out, and then somebody came and slipped in the water, or got injured by one of the shards. So what's halacha? So the Tana Kamma holds you're chayiv for it. Your thing in the street caused this injury. Rabbi Yehuda says you're only chayiv if you intended for what happened, otherwise you are pater for it. Now the Gemara moves in on the opinion of the Tana Kamma that you're chayiv, and the Gemara is going to introduce a very involved machlokes between Rav and Shmuel as to how the bar, which is not an actual hole in the ground, how that works. If you put something in the street and it causes someone to trip or to get injured, how does that work? According to Shmuel, that's a bar, even though it's not a hole in the ground. And the classic example of that is Amnes Kinim Masai, that's on the roof. You have a rock, a knife, or a bundle on the roof and falls off in a common wind, lands in the street, and somebody gets hurt by it, by tripping on it afterwards. So it's an object that's in the street, it's a stumbling block, and someone trips over it, so it's like a bar. Shmuel says that counts as a bar and has all the halachos of the bar. Now what's actually hurting you is not the object, what's actually hurting you is the ground, but that's okay according to Shmuel. Shmuel holds that you can be hurt by the ground when you fall into the bar. If you fall into a bar, you hit your head on the floor, that's the classic hezek of the bar. Here also you tripped over the water or the rock, and you hit your head on the floor, that's a mazik. And therefore, since it has halachos of the bar, it follows that if a person falls in and he gets killed by it, you are pater. The Gemara has a drasha that tells us that if he gets injured by it, you're chayiv, and if kalim break in it, it's like the death of the kalim, you're pater on the kalim. Drasha for that, it's because there's menafel shama shar chamar. We say shar and not a person, chamar and not kalim. That's why misa. But if a person gets injured, then you are chayiv. So that's the halachos of the bar, and that's. So we have here a few things. First of all, the water, the bar, all those things can belong to you. Shmuel holds if something belongs to you, it's still a bar. Second of all, you're injured by the ground and not by the object itself. Third of all, it has the halachos of the bar, and that's that a misa of a bar and the misa of a person and the breaking of the kalim is pater in this situation. Now, Rav disagrees with that entire structure. Rav says, no. First of all, when you fall into a bar, you're not hurt by the ground. The ground doesn't belong to the person who made the bar. The fact that the ground hits you, if you hit your head on the ground, it's a grumma. The guy made you fall. That caused you to strike your head on the ground. It's just a grumma. He's pater for that. Rav holds that there's bad air in the pit that you are responsible for creating, and a person breathes that in, that's where he gets injured. The ox falls in there and he breathes that, that's how he gets injured. Now, Rav is an extension of that hold, since you're not chayiv because of the ground. Rav holds it's only a hole that you're chayiv for. If you were tripping over something and then you hit your head on the floor, there's no bad air, so if it's water, a rock, a stone, a knife, you trip on these things, you can't blame the bar. You can't have hilchas bar on that, because you're landing on the ground. So the reason that you chayv all those things is not because of bar. The reason you chayv all those things is because of memaina. It's because it belongs to you, and it's yours, and you're responsible for it. And therefore, Rav says the only situation of a bar is if it's hefker, if it's a hole, and if it's hefker, all these belong to you, and therefore it's memaina. So the hezek has to be caused by your possession. So in the case of our Mishnah, the case of the water, where you fall you have to be the hezek has to be that your clothing got soaked by the water. It can't be that you slipped and you hit your head, or you slipped and you hurt yourself on the ground. You wouldn't be pater for that. So that's the length of machlokes between Rav and Shmuel in a number of different areas. Bottom line, as far as the Mishnah is concerned, Shmuel says it has the dinim of bar, and therefore you chayiv even if you hit on the ground, and you're chayiv on nezikin of a person, but not misa and not breaking of kalim. Well, Rav says you're chayiv only if you got the clothing wet, and if the actual water itself is what hurt you. Gemara now brings a proof from a brisa. It's going to be a mixed proof and actually a contradictory halachas in the brisa itself. So whether it says like Rav or says like Shmuel. So the brisa reads as follows. Rav brings it. It says, based on the pasuk of the bar, it says "V'nofal sham lashar chamar," and in falls an ox or a donkey. So the drush is made Sharveli Adam Chamar V'Loi Kalim, that you're only chayav for a person, you're only chayav for a Sharna Chamar, not for a person, not for Kalim. So here again is the halacha that you're putter on the misa of an Adam and the breaking of a kli. And from here we learn, the Brisa says that if an ox falls in and his kalim, his equipment breaks, or the donkey falls in and his clothing rips, that you're chayiv for the mazik, for the hezek of the animal, you're putter on the kalim. So again, all the halachos of the bar here. Now, the Brisa continues though, and this is where our proof is, and says, what is this similar to a rock, a knife, or a bundle that was left in Shus Rabim, and somebody got damaged by them. Samara notes that the lashon is wrong. It shouldn't say that this is similar to the case, that the case of the pit is similar to the Avnei Skina Masai. It's the opposite. The Avnei Skina Masai is similar to that. But anyway, the point is that Avnei Skina Masai is like a pit, clearly saying like Shmuel that it's midin bar, not midin mimainai. Now, the problem, so that's a clear proof to Shmuel. The problem is the next line, which is a proof to Rav, because the next line says that if somebody broke his kli on this rock that you left, you chayiv. Why should you be chayiv for that? We just said for a kli is not chayiv on a bar, and you're telling me Avnei Skina Masai has the halacha of a bar. This must be saying, like Rav then, that it has the halacha of mimainai if you're chayiv on a kli. So Gemara says, so the Reish is a proof to Shmuel, the Seif is a proof to Rav. So Gemara says, there's actually a contradiction between the Reish and the Seif. You have to answer that first. So Rav and Shmuel will both answer it, each one in their own way, according to their halacha. Rav says, the Reish is discussing where it was hefker. Since it's hefker, that could be a bar, because the essential factor of being a bar is that it doesn't belong to you. If an Avnei Skina Masai that you're mafkir, that is hefker. And therefore, the Seif continues and says, well, if you weren't mafkir it, then it has the din of mimainai. And then if somebody breaks his container on it, then you would be chayiv, even though it's a kli. Now, Shmuel answers, and he says, no, really, the whole thing is talking about a bar. In the end, where we say you're chayiv for the kli, is talking in the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that holds you chayiv for kalim in a bar altogether. So it's ending off and saying, according to Rabbi Yehuda, here you're chayiv. The Gemara now brings another halacha named Rabbi Lazar. There's two completely reversed versions of this Gemara, and that's what happens if the case where the jug breaks on the rock, if it either you tripped on the rock and the jug broke on the floor, or you tripped on the floor and the jug broke on the rock. So you're having two things involved here, the floor and the rock. So according to the first version of Elazar says, it's only if you tripped on the rock and the jug broke on the rock. But if you tripped on the ground and fell and the jug hit the rock, you putter, because the ground is what causes you to fall. If something else causes you to fall, not the bar that the guy left there, which in this case is a rock, if something else causes you to get hit, causes you to fall into the place where the bar is, then the bar, and the owner of the bar, the one who made the bar, is putter on that has to happen. Now, the Gemara says that is not like the opinion of Rabbi Nassan. Rabbi Nassan is discussing a situation where an ox pushes another ox into a bar. There's a machlokes here between Rabbi Nassan and Bava Kamma. If the owner of the ox doesn't have to pay, does the owner of the bar have to pick up the rest of the payment? According to Rabbi Nassan, he would have to. That means that the owner of the bar is chayiv, even though an ox pushed him in. So this halacha is not like Rabbi Nassan. Now, according to the other version, Rabbi Elazar says the opposite. Rabbi Elazar says even if you tripped on the ground and broke on the rock, you are chayiv. The Gemara says then that is exactly like Rabbi Nassan.